relationship you have with your father determines the relationship you have with others. But the relationship you have with your mother determines the relationship that you have with yourself. So if you have the mother wound, or if your mother sometimes gave you the silent treatment, or if you had to deal with explosive rage, you may find that in your relationships you are often asking your partner, do you still love me? Is everything okay? Because the tumultuous relationship with your mother made you feel like you always had to check if you were doing everything right. And it makes you hyper vigilant in relationships that your partner's mood is determined by your behavior. And so you might find yourself falling into symptoms of the good girl syndrome because the mother wound makes you feel unworthy of love. And it also makes you feel responsible for someone else's emotions. You're always checking, does your partner still love you? Are they angry with you? Is there anything you can do to make them feel better? And it may make you extremely codependent. But you need to realize that not everyone will treat you the way that she treated you. Remind yourself that you are safe now and you're not responsible for anyone else's emotions. Secondly, I know you can't control this and it sounds very weird to say it out loud, but before, if possible, before you get into a relationship, take note of the birth order of your potential partner. Birth order in terms of, are they the firstborn, the middle child, the youngest child? I know you can't control who you fall in love with, but my advice to any eldest daughter is to try and go for someone who was at least the eldest son, and even better, the eldest child, because they will understand what it's like to be the deputy parent. And so you won't have to try to explain the burdens that you've had growing up, because they may have experienced the same. And they'll understand any traumas or issues that you may have subconsciously as a result of the role that you played as the deputy parent. If you end up with the youngest son, you may end up in a situation where you are perpetuating that dynamic indefinitely. And I'm not saying that marriages or relationships between the eldest daughter and the youngest son don't work. I'm just saying that relationships between similar birth orders, according to psychological research, tend to work out better because they're easier. An eldest son is likely to not even need to consciously make an effort not to put you in the role of the second mom or the third parent. Most of all, try not to blame your partner for any insecurities that you have. So on the days when you doubt their love and you see yourself making it their fault and blaming them for not making you feel loved, remember where that wound stems from. It's not from this relationship with your partner, and it's not even from any past relationships with any other romantic partners. The wound comes from the first relationship that you ever had. I've been advised so many times by well-meaning people throughout my life, like older African women. They told me, do not tell your husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, they told me not to tell him about the situation between my mother and I. And I could not imagine living a lie like that. How would I explain these insecurities if I was not honest about my mother wound? I could not lie and blame it on like a past relationship and be like, oh, this ex-boyfriend made me feel so insecure to the point where I just can't let it go. That never happened, and it is unlikely that an ex could affect you so much that you take it into future relationships to this extent, to the extent that the mother wound changes you. The mother wound will determine how you show up in relationships, how you show up in your career, how you show up with every female relationship that you'll ever have. It affects everything, and I can't imagine not telling the person that I love about my deepest trauma. So I also recommend to you to be honest about anyone that you are serious about. Tell them the truth about what's going on in your life and what has gone on. And if your partner has a good relationship with their mother, they may not understand at first. And you cannot blame them for that, because some people have the most beautiful, pure and loving relationships with their mother, and I know I'm extremely envious of that, especially mother and daughter relationships that are amazing. So if your partner doesn't understand the first or the second or the third time you tell them about what has gone on or something that your mother has recently done, understand that they can't even imagine having a relationship like that. Try not to let it get you down. The more time they spend with your mother and the more stories you do tell them, I hope that they will start to see and believe you for themselves. Because remember, the mask always drops. That's the best thing about abusers. They cannot pretend forever. They say the relationship you have with your mother determines the relationship you have with yourself, and the relationship you have with your father determines the relationship you have with others. Understanding this has helped me to understand why, before healing my mother wound, I had a tendency to blame myself whenever things would go wrong in the relationship. I had a tendency to catastrophize whenever I knew that I had upset my partner in some way. I always felt like they're gonna leave me. I've messed up and they're gonna break up with me. Just for the slightest little thing, because it was the same with your mother. If you did something wrong, that was it. She was angry with you, she shut you out, maybe she abandoned you in some way, but you knew. Here you're in the dog box and it was difficult to get out of that dog box. Know that in a healthy relationship, conflict is normal and it's all about how you resolve that conflict. So don't feel like if you have a fight or if something goes wrong, that that's the end of the relationship. It's not. You will get through it, and the more of these fights and disagreements you get through respectfully and lovingly, the stronger your relationship becomes. Which is the opposite of what happens when you have the mother wound. I really hope you find someone who knows that whenever you have a problem, it's not you against each other, but it's you two against the issue. An eldest daughter, I know that you've been strong for so long and you may even be struggling to be soft and be in your feminine energy, but I highly encourage you to be vulnerable in your relationship. Let this person love you. If you're in a heterosexual relationship, let this man love you. Show your emotions. Be honest with them about what they do to you, about what you feel, about what has happened to you. I cannot stress it enough. The more vulnerable you are, the more deeply in love you can go. Because nothing is more attractive than vulnerability. And there's nothing more comforting than knowing that you can be honest about how you feel, because it makes you feel safe in your relationship, and it also makes the other person feel safe to do the same. And this doesn't just apply to romantic relationships. Anyone in my life who allows me to be honest about my mother wound is someone I'm going to keep in my life forever. If you don't let me talk about my deepest pain, then you're out. So imagine the opposite, being with someone who allows you to be fully you. Someone who's keen to help you heal. How close, how deep, how loving is that? So my friend, I wish you well on your quest to find true love, because trust me, it is out there and it is the most healing thing. And most of all, you deserve it. But you have to open your heart and let it in.